introduction. Yeah, my name is Jonathan Keane. I'm a freelance technology journalist moderating this panel this morning, which is about AI, which feels like a very, very big thing to sink our teeth into in 25 minutes. I think when I got the name for this panel a few weeks ago, I was kind of daunted by how we're going to talk about this in 25 minutes. It feels like every second word out of people's mouths over this event is about AI, but I've got a great panel here to try and decode some of it, specifically in the matter of boosting business efficiency and revenue. So I'm joined by some great panelists here who maybe will do a quick introduction first. We'll start with you, Marie.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Jonathan. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Emotionalized AI. My name is Marie Toft. And so we're all about emotional intelligence. So what we do is we put the EI into AI. So unsurprisingly, perhaps some people need a bit of help with emotional intelligence. And what we do is we help inspire trust, connection, and greater productivity by empowering users to always communicate with emotional intelligence. So whenever they're creating any form of content or communication, preparing for a meeting, preparing for a conversation, our AI is like a cognitive collaborator, an AI co-pilot, which is always on, making suggestions that maybe how will this land emotionally with an audience. But what's interesting is the human is always in the loop. We make the suggestions, the user decides if it works for them or not. So we're currently in the employee engagement and customer service verticals. They're the verticals we're pursuing. So we've actually been working with generative AI for 3 years. So the world woke up to, long before the world woke up to ChatGPT. We are the only AI and NLP domain model trained with emotional intelligence at its core. We're creating our own domain model, and we've called it EMER. The first 3 letters standing for Emotionally Intelligent Model, and we have a data creation team who create bespoke data for enterprises which promote their values, their behavior, their cultures, and encourage everyone to connect emotionally.
Alan?
Hi everyone, my name is Alan Gormley. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Shopbox AI. Excuse me, sorry. I also have a cough. And the reason we founded, I've been 26 years in the industry, so I started back in '97, before some people in this room were born probably. So AI has been around a very long time. Some of us started to hear about it 5 years ago. This year everyone hears about it. The reason we set up Shopbox is AI has been used in anger by very large companies for a very long period of time. So I typically show a screenshot from 20 years ago about Amazon doing hyper-personalization in real time for hundreds of thousands of customers at the same time. And we looked at the entire industry 4 years ago and said, there's no trickle-down effect here. There's way too many barriers. So he said, why are they allowed to play there? They make about 35% of their revenue, according to analysts, from from applying AI in real time in retail. And we said, that's not fair. Why are 50% of consumers starting their journey on Amazon? That's not fair. So let's take this technology and make it available to everyone. So the whole ethos behind Shopbox AI is an AI that is very deep and really understands customers, really understands products, really understands retail, but can be used by any retailer. And that's what we're really focused is trying to democratize it within the retail sector.
And Olivier?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Olivier Blais. I'm from Montreal. That's my accent. I'm co-founder and head of decision science for Move AI. Move AI, we're a consulting company. We help companies leveraging their data and also build AI capabilities. The goal is really to be concrete about it. In Montreal, I don't know if you know Yoshua Bengio, for instance, or Yann Lequin, or these are godfathers of AI. They all came from Canada, or they studied in Canada. So AI is really important in Canada, but usually it's going to stay on the academic level. So people will know about AI, but they feel like it's not for businesses, it's for scholars. And there's a lot of technology that we can leverage right away. And even 10 years ago, we could leverage a lot of technology and apply it in businesses. And this is essentially what we try to do. We try to clear the gap, and we try to make sure that organizations are able to use technologies to solve benefit and solve business problems. I'm also, maybe just one side note, because I know it might be really important, I'm also part of the ISO standard, so I act as an expert on the ISO standard, building standardization and controls for AI systems. I know it's really useful these days. A lot of people are finally talking about regulation in AI, so I'm happy to talk about it a little bit later if you want.
Okay. You're all working like B2B, you're building solutions for other businesses. What is your experience now like trying to pitch your products to businesses now that AI is such a dominant topic of conversation? Say you're trying to pitch this product a year or two ago versus now. What kind of questions are companies asking you about AI?
Well, I have to say ChatGPT has been really good for us. So we've been building this for 2 years now. And then ChatGPT, the world woke up to it last November, and even being here for these 2 days, it's the top of everybody's conversation are these large language models and generative AI. So it's been really good for us, to be honest, Jonathan. But actually, it's really interesting. We have a multinational client. We're building a bespoke employee engagement tool for them. We're a startup, Literally, it was me. I'm from Cork in my bedroom, and I saw the potential of this. My background, by the way, is I'm a TV producer. I worked for RTE and the BBC and SBS Australia, and I kind of connecting emotionally with audiences was always my USP. And then I left RTE and I went back and I studied psychotherapy. So I'm a trained psychotherapist. So really what I've done is I've combined my kind of emotional storytelling skills with my psychotherapy training and developed this emotionally intelligent AI. That's what we've done. I've trained a team to create the data, to train the AI. So what we're doing is this has been a very auspicious week for us. So what we did was we demonstrated our domain model for our multinational customer on Tuesday. And they said 2 interesting things when it comes to pitching to business that really resonated with us, because we're rolling out beta testing now the next month. And they said, first of all, they really liked what we're building because it's a lovely introduction for their employees to generative AI. Mm-hmm. So of course, you open up your newspaper every day, you turn on the radio, and everybody's talking about generative AI. And is it apocalypse now, or is it going to, revolutionize the world? And it's in our hands, really, as Olivier was saying with the regulation. This is a really important inflection point. But what they said to us was they felt our technology is a very gentle, inclusive way of introducing generative AI to their employees. Mm-hmm. The other thing they said, which really resonated with me, which I was delighted about as someone who was, who helped my team build this tool, they believe that because of the suggestions coming through, it will actually encourage everyone in the company, because this is not a HR tool. This is a cognitive collaborator for anyone. You could have a colleague that you're really struggling with and you want to sit down and talk to them. You put it into our search engine and it will guide you how to connect emotionally and have an emotionally engaging conversation with that person. Mm-hmm. And what they said was, it'll actually encourage more emotional intelligence among everybody, because this technology is there always saying, how is this going to land? So it's certainly getting easier. Let me say, it's a lot easier than it was this time last year.
I guess it feels like when ChatGPT came on the scene, there was more of a tangible product there that everyone could see and try, whereas in the past, kind of someone said AI, and like, well, what is it? How does it actually work? I guess, Alan, I'm kind of curious to know, in the retail sector, how do you kind of, first of all, apply AI in that setting, but also what kind of questions do clients ask you when you go to them with your product?
Yeah, I guess retail's really interesting. I've worked across a lot of different industries, but retail is by far the most dynamic and the most innovative. And a lot of people would disagree with that, by the way. But when you actually talk to retailers, they're always looking for the next thing. And they're prepared to try things if they think they'll work. And they love experimenting. They wouldn't say that out loud, but they're actually very good at it. One thing that we've seen in the last year, I guess this is probably our 4th or 5th AI hype cycle. We probably started in the 60s. I think I've lived through quite a few of them, unfortunately. But I think this one's real, and we're coming out of the disillusionment into this is a real technology, it's going to stick around. The questions are changing from industry. So last year, the start of this year, we stopped telling people how valuable it was. We still do. We're actually saying, you know how valuable it is. You all know now. There's no need to have that conversation. Your problem is how do you get ahead of the big guys as fast as possible? So the conversation has moved much more into what's the business focus, what's it actually going to deliver, and an understanding that things like bias so we talk a lot about bias when we think about gender and we think about race and we think about ethnicity and everything else, but there's also bias where AI is actually off doing its own thing and it's working against the business. And in fact, one of the foundations in Shopbox was a conversation we had where we realized that that was happening out in the market, where actually a lot of AI works against the business and they're trying to keep control on it. So the whole thing we started from was you got to understand your business first and build AI to work with it. AI is not an answer to anything, okay, unless you understand the business problem. So you've got to fit into the business. I spend most of my time talking to retailers saying, this is retail, it's not AI. You start with retail. There's a way this industry works, and AI has got to work within that industry. Because the industry only works because we work in a certain way, and certain economics are at play. So we got to really focus on those. So I think the conversation has become a very mature conversation extremely fast. The other thing I would say with business is they get the concepts now. 2 years ago, people said to me, don't say AI in your title because they don't know what it is. And I go, I don't think they're that stupid. You know, they're not, it turns out they're not that stupid. They actually know what they're talking about. So I think the conversation's got much more intelligent and much more adult.
Okay. I just also mentioned that if anyone has any questions from the audience, you can put the questions into the app. We'll have 5 minutes at the end to put those questions to the panelists. But just on the point that, picking up on the point that Alan made, but also you mentioned as well, Olivier, as far as just the rules and regulations around AI in the space that you're now operating in. We're seeing regulation coming on an EU level and inevitably in other jurisdictions as well. What kind of conversations are you having internally as far as building these products and putting up these guardrails yourselves and then preparing for inevitably more regulations and to then present that to a client?
That's a good question. In fact, it's about, so it needs to be a new mindset. It needs to become the new way of designing a product. So when you build something, let's say I'll give you an example, like the two ends of the spectrum. On the one hand, you have the YOLO mode, where you have people who just try things, disrupting the business, applying technology blindly. It sometimes happens like this in companies. The problem is it's not the proper way of building something that will then mitigate risk and do things in a responsible way. The other end of the spectrum, and I won't even be too drastic, but it's about thinking about these risks up front and not being blocked by the risk. Everything is risky in innovation. The goal is just to find the controls and find the different approach to mitigate the risk, to minimize the risk. For instance, a good way to do it would be to not use ChatGPT just in general and say, okay, we'll ask, like everybody could ask any question to a system and fingers crossed it will work. Instead, you say, okay, let's use this awesome technology. Let's test it for a precise use case. Let's validate it over and over and over. Let's create controls around it. It then becomes much more safe. So this is the type of mindset that you need to have to embrace change, but at the same time being able to regulate what you build and build it in a responsible way.
When you're having these conversations with clients, sometimes they come to you with, perhaps they've read too much into the hype, do they have maybe unrealistic expectations about what these products can do, and how do you kind of, I guess, rein that in a little bit, maybe temper the expectations? Whoever wants to jump in first.
I work with a lot of cynical people, so we're fine. They tend to go prove it very, very quickly. But I think you're right. I think there's probably a segment that's very much, this will solve all my problems. All I have to do is, I was at a session last week where a guy said, I got ChatGPT to set up an entire store for me, and it ran itself for 3 months, and I made £50, and everyone went, oh my God, what's going to happen to the world? And I went, does anybody notice he only made 50 quid? Like, you know, that's not economically viable. So I think, you know, a whole room of people who are getting a bit carried away with themselves. I think the realism is coming in, just because it's more obvious, it's there in front of us.
And Maria, I just want to go back to Emotionize. You kind of broadly and more kind of touching on the customer support side of things as well. That's been another area that seems to be ripe for AI disrupting it. Again, what are kind of clients saying there as far as perhaps even reservations about using this technology? Do they present anything like that to you?
No, well, you know, I feel really strongly about ethical AI, and I feel really strongly about, you know, what Olivier was talking about in guardrails. And, you know, like I said to you, Jonathan, our technology is the human in the loop. We've gotten very good insights on the whole customer service vertical when it comes to artificial intelligence, particularly when it comes to emotional engagement. So basically, we pitched to a very big technology company, and they shared some really interesting data with us when it comes to their customers. So they have customer support agents working to help, their clients. And the pandemic has had a massive effect on the two verticals we're in. Employee engagement has fallen off a cliff since the pandemic. It's just gone nosedived. It was on the increase before the pandemic. It's gone like that. People are feeling so completely disconnected. And customer service, what was very interesting, what they were saying was, even though the pandemic is effectively kind of over and people are returning to the workforce, a lot of people obviously, and I'm sure everybody in this room is the same, are continuing to work quite a bit from home. It suits most of us. And what's happening is the younger customer service agents in this company, they don't have the benefits of turning around to older colleagues when they're having a bad day or dealing with someone and getting their advice. They're no longer available to them. And they said some really interesting things about emotional connection and customer service. So when someone approaches, and we're all customers here, when you go for customer support, there's two things going on. There's the technical problem that you want solved, and there's the personal problem. And what's really interesting is that their data has shown when their agents solve the technical problem, but not the personal problem, the NPS scores are low. When they can't immediately solve the technical problem, but they solve the personal problem, their NPS scores are high. So what this really boils down to is the personal trumps every single time. So with our technology, it is there, it's a cognitive collaborator for all these agents. They're sending people off on empathy courses and emotional intelligence courses, and they come back and they're all delighted with themselves, and then they have, a few months later they have a bad customer and it all goes out the window again. I mean, we're all only human and we're having bad days, whereas our AI is just there encouraging and nudging and helping someone stay the course and always engage emotionally with that customer.
We're starting to get a few questions in here, so I might just want a few of them out. One here is, what's the killer question I can ask or a deep statement I can give to companies so that they can work with you on AI? So I guess that's sort of, what is the one thing you would say to a company, say, you should work with us?
For me, everything comes down to business. So there was a great paper written back in the early 90s saying data scientist is the sexiest new job. Okay, it's 20 years ago that was written. It was the highest readership in the Harvard Business Review for years after that. But the person who wrote it, whose name escapes me, and I apologize, he's very well known, but he said the biggest disconnect in AI is data scientists don't understand business and business don't understand data science. So I think that when we talk to people, we say, this is here to solve a particular problem. By the way, here's all the things it can get wrong. And when you're honest about what it can get wrong and where to contain it and where to put it, it becomes a different conversation. And I think skills, which is a huge conversation in AI and is going to be going forward, we need more people who really understand data and really understand the business, because businesses do not work the way people think. They are not as simple as people think. There's a lot of complexity that needs to be managed. Like what you said about an NPS score. Most people would think logically, oh, you solved my problem. It's not that. It's the emotional connection. So I think the connection between business and tech is really, really important. That's where we seem to excel against our competitors.
I would say very briefly, for me, and I really feel strongly about this technology is going to change our lives. It's going to change our society, but we need to make it human more, not human less. And that's what our AI is trying to do.
I think it's also the methodology of how you deliver things. So making sure you're solving the right problems. Sometimes it sounds easier than the reality, because people, they want to try technology, but you don't start with technology, you start with problem. You also want to be agile in the way you're able to tackle the problem, because like you said, the problem was not the technical problem, it was a human problem, but you know it along the way. So you need to be agile, you need to test, and test. And then it's about making sure it's future-proof, what you build. So it's not even about the technical solution, it's about everything that's around it to make sure, again, if you talk regulation, would it be regulated easily? Would it meet the requirements? Is one thing that now you have to have in mind.
Okay. And we've got a question here just for you, Marie, specifically about your product. If people are relying on a tool to create emotional connections, do you worry that we would actually be becoming more emotionally stunted by not learning these skills and end up hurting mental health?
No, actually, it's really interesting because I kind of addressed that already. When we demonstrated, I've been in the trenches now building this with my tech team for the last 5 months, and we demonstrated the model to our client on Tuesday, and their immediate reaction was, if you have an emotionally intelligent cognitive collaborator encouraging you, well, of course you're going to start thinking like that then. I would actually argue the opposite. They believe, that our client believes, that this, and it's, you see, our AI has been trained in this client's values and behavior. So, employee engagement particularly, every corporation, every large enterprise has values. I worked for large corporations. How much those values are actually lived is quite often very debatable. These values tend to sit in a drawer. They're in their kind of their external marketing and communications. Quite often they're not communicated amongst the employees. Our AI is trained in those values, so if you're writing something that is encouraging those values, it's reminding you of them. It's actually making the values active instead of passive. So no, I'd actually argue it becomes much more live and real, as opposed to just you having to try and do it on your own.
Okay. And a few more questions are coming in quickly. This one is perhaps not quite directed to your specific areas, but it's someone asking about the area of finance. And I'm kind of curious to know if this may be any kind of finance clients perhaps you've dealt with that are interested in ChatGPT. The question is, how can ChatGPT and AI be used to improving internal process efficiencies, using finance as an example? What are kind of clients saying there?
So, like for instance, in finance, ChatGPT, and let's just say something about ChatGPT. If you're using it directly and you're just asking questions, it might be incomplete. So instead, what you should always do, you should add information in your prompt. And here, for instance, if it's in finance, it's about a process. If it's about your own process in your business, you should say, can you help streamline this process? And you provide information in your prompt. This is how you'll be able to get the most out of the value of the solution. So that's one thing. And it's about finance, but it's also about everything else. So here, if you want to help, for instance, building a new process, building a new tool, do an analysis, add information into your prompt, ask a question that's very precise, and then validate the results, and this is essentially how you can make it work. I don't know if I answered the question.
And then just finally, before we wrap up, as far as investing in AI, you mentioned you have some multinational customers, but then you may have smaller companies as well. For the smaller companies, though, that are trying to get bang for their buck, what would be the number one piece of advice you give for them when they're going to say, I want to invest in AI, but I have a very limited budget?
So our entire ethos is everyone gets the same technology. So we have people who are 200,000 in online sales per year, 200 million in online sales per year. They both get the same technology. In fact, some of our smaller guys are on better tech than the bigger guys because they move faster. So the thing for me with AI is we founded Shopbox to kill barriers. Barriers were money, there were skills, 500 grand before you get out of bed if you want to employ your own data scientists, okay, because you need a team. You remove all that and you buy a service and suddenly anybody can use it. So the whole point is to remove the barriers and to help everybody take advantage of the technology. And I think once somebody says, oh, by the way, you can have this technology, but you need to add all this, we've come over that, so you shouldn't be talking to those people. It's very easy to take advantage of it. Just focus on what is important to you.
Okay, great. We're just about out of time, so thanks so much to our panelists, and thanks you all for joining. If you please give our panelists a round of applause. Thanks so much.